Hello everyone and welcome in for one final state championship installment of the Salina Post Sports Friday night preview show. I'm Tyler Henry. It is so good to be talking football with you all here on Thanksgiving weekend. Hope you enjoyed your turkey day and some time with family and friends here this week. But without further ado, let's get into it. We have got a lot to talk about here ahead of state championship weekend. A quick look back to the semifinal round. We had three of our area teams playing in the state semifinals and all three of them have advanced. Salina Central knocked off number one ranked Great Bend 30-28 in a thriller of a game down in 5A. Southeast of Saline handled their business with Hoisington in a 22-12 victory, and Lincoln took it to Sylvan Lucas 48-28. They absolutely smoked Sylvan Lucas to continue their run, headed to their first ever state championship. With that, let's go ahead and get into the matchups here, and we will go classification by classification and let you know who is going to be playing, where they'll be playing, and what you can expect in the matchup. And we begin in 6A, where Olathe Northwest will take on Manhattan. That game will take place on Saturday at 1 o'clock in Emporia. Olathe Northwest comes in at 9-8. They avenged a loss to Olathe West in the quarters and knocked out the defending state champions in Gardner Edgerton in the semifinals. Manhattan, meanwhile, is 10-2. Their losses this season came to Junction City and Wichita Northwest. They beat number one Mays 55-31 in the quarterfinals and Derby in the semis. Remember, Manhattan is the team that lost in the state title game last season. They've got an opportunity to etch their names back in the history books here this year. Meanwhile, in Class 5A, boy, this is going to be an exciting one. Salina Central on a massive run taking on Baser Linwood. That game will take place here this afternoon, Friday at 2 o'clock in Emporia. For Central, they are 11-1. This is their first state title appearance since 2005, and they are seeking a seventh state title overall. They beat Topeka West, Goddard, Salina South, and number one Great Bend to get here. On the other side of this matchup, Baser Linwood comes in undefeated at 12-0. They knocked off Leavenworth in the quarters and St. James Academy in the semis. St. James Academy knocked them out in the second round of 2024, so a revenge game for Baser Linwood, and they now find themselves in a state title matchup where a new champ will be crowned. St. Thomas Aquinas was knocked out by Mill Valley, was knocked out by St. James Academy, was knocked out by Baser Linwood. By virtue of that, there will be a new king of 5A this year, the Central Mustangs, hoping it'll be the maroon and white. Down in 4A on Saturday at 7 o'clock in Emporia, Bishop Miege will take on Cape and Mount Carmel. Miege comes in at 7-5. They were 3-5 in the regular season, lost 4 straight to Rockhurst, a team from Missouri, St. Thomas Aquinas of 5A, St. Pius, another team from Missouri, and Blue Valley North, another 5A team, but they have rattled off 5 straight wins to get here. They face an uphill task today against Cape and Mount Carmel, who is 11-1. They also played a heavy 5 and 6A schedule. Their lone loss came to St. James Academy. They knocked out the defending champions in Andover Central in the second round, and look at some of these scores. These are playoff scores for Cape and Mount Carmel. 63-0 over El Dorado, 62-0 over Andover Central, 64-0 over Wellington, and 56-7 over Wamego. Cape has been rolling. Many see them as favorites in this game. Down in Class 3A, we've got another state championship rematch game between Topeka Hayden and Andale. That'll take place on Friday at 6 o'clock. Last season, it went down as a 36-19 Andale victory. And, well, if you don't know much about Andale, I don't know what more I can tell you. They are 12-0, the defending state champs. They are back in the state title match for the 6th time in 7 years. They have won 5 state titles in 6 attempts, and you look at their playoff scores, they've been impressive. 69-0 over Chapman, 51-6 over Clay Center, 57-7 over Pratt, and 41-7 over Rock Creek in the semifinals last week. Topeka Hayden, though, they've been just as impressive. 12-0 this season. You look at their playoff wins, 70-7 over Columbus, 42-0 in a shutout of Wellsville, 42-29 over Jefferson West, and 46-0 in another shutout over Santa Fe Trail last week. It should make for a fun game in Class 3A. Another state championship rematch here in 2A. This will be a Saturday game at noon in Hutch, and it sees the defending state champs in Southeast of Saline looking to run it back against the team they beat last year in Nemaha Central. The champs at Southeast of Saline are 12-0. They defeated Southwestern Heights, Russell, Phillipsburg, and Hoisington. Here's the impressive stat on the Trojan defense. They have not allowed a single point in the second half of any of their 4 playoff games to date this year. Nemaha Central, meanwhile, at 12-0 on a revenge tour. They defeated West Franklin, Council Grove, Sabetha, and Osage City, and they are seeking a 4th state championship since 2019. All three meetings between these two schools have come in the playoffs. Southeast won 26-13 in the first round back in 2018, and then won State 36-28 last year. The big guys to watch will be Grady Gebhardt and Carter Hike, who have combined, and I promise these numbers are true, for 5,800 plus yards and 94 touchdowns this season. Grady Gebhardt and Carter Hike have been on a ridiculous tear. Expect plenty out of them on Saturday. In Class 1A on Friday at 1 o'clock in Hutch, it's a game between Rossville and Sterling. Rossville is 11-1. Their lone loss came to Nemaha Central back in Week 3. They beat Jackson Heights to get to the final. Meanwhile, Sterling is undefeated at 12-0. They defeated Smith Center to get to the state championship game. The two teams in the state final last year, Conway Springs and Centralia, were both knocked out before reaching the quarterfinals, so there will be a new champion in Class 1A. In 8-man Division 1 on Saturday at 1 o'clock in Greensburg, it's a meeting between Lincoln and South Central. How about the Lincoln Leopards? They're 11-1. They got their first ever playoff win in program history over Solomon, then their second playoff win over Oswego, third against Saline, and fourth against Sylvan Lucas. Every round has been a new personal best, so hey, why not go out and win it all this year? Standing in their way is South Central, an 11-0 team who defeated Leote Wichita and Hill City to get to the final. Hoxie, the defending champions in 8-man Division 1, missed the playoffs entirely, and the runner-up in Central Plains got knocked out in the first round. So much like in 1A, there will be a new champ in 8-man Division 1. Speaking of new champs, 8-man Division 2, this is a big story. On Saturday at 7 o'clock in Greensburg, Hanover will take on Victoria. Hanover is 12-0. They eliminated the defending champs in Axtell 34-24 last week to reach the final. That ended a run for Axtell of 62 straight wins spread over 5 seasons and a run that included 4 straight state titles. So for the first time in almost 5 years, there will be a new champ in 8-man Division 1. On the other side, it's Victoria, who comes in at 11-0. They shut out Hodgman County 48-0 to return to the state final. They lost to Hoxie in the championship last season, and I'm sure they're very excited to see somebody else in the state title match, a chance for Victoria to get some revenge and claim their title in 8-man Division 2. And finally, down in 6-man on Saturday at 3 o'clock in Greensburg, it's a game between Cunningham and West Can. This is also a revenge match, potentially for Cunningham, and a rematch of a 49-48 state final a year ago. West Can comes in at 10-1. They are the defending state champions. Their lone loss came to a school by the name of Otis in Colorado, and they beat South Barber 26-21 in the state semis. Meanwhile, Cunningham has had maybe the weirdest path to a state championship that I've ever seen. Their lone loss came to Mineola, an 8-man team in the regular season. Here's what they did in the playoffs. They had a bye in the first round. They got a win by forfeit in the second round after taking 2 weeks off. They defeated Otis Bison 46-0 in the third round and Tesket 44-0 in the state semifinals. They are fresh and looking to get some revenge as they take on the team that beat them in the state title game last year, the defending state champs in West Can. In case you're interested, the KASC crown has already been decided. The Manhattan Eagles defeated Sunrise Christian 46-38 in the Lone State Championship game that will not be played this weekend. That's a look at every single state title game happening in the state of Kansas. It should be a great Friday and Saturday of high school football. We will step away, but when we come back, we'll have interviews with head coach Mark Sandbo of the Central Mustangs and Mitch Gebhardt of Southeast of Saline to talk more football and upcoming matchups this week. This is the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show, and you're listening to it right here on KINA. Back here on the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show, presented by Kansas Wesleyan, we are joined now by Salina Central head coach Mark Sandbo. Coach, thank you so much for stopping by, sir.
Appreciate you having me.
So you and your guys pulled off an incredible semifinal victory at Great Bend last week. Thinking back on that game, what are the things that really stick out in your mind from arguably the biggest victory in your tenure?
I don't know. There's a lot that come to mind. I mean, I think how we played defensively, probably the two most explosive, for sure, two of the most explosive players we've played all year. We've played some explosive football players. I mean, the week before, the Myers kid and the Curtis kid are extremely explosive, but these guys from Great Bend just bring a different dynamic. And I would say the Omnot kid, I think I'm saying that right. I've probably butchered it all week. was very similar to Myers and Curtis, but the Premer kid was as good as advertised. And probably arguably the best tight end in the country. And he plays in space well. He was fantastic on the defensive end. For us to corral him like we did, I think offensively he had maybe his lowest output of the season. And, that's a credit to Coach Kingsbury and his staff. We knew what they wanted to do. We knew some comfort calls that they had. And just like we did offensively, defensively, when those times arise, we made the most of it, and they bailed us out a couple times, and they played fantastic. So I would say what sticks out the most is what we did defensively against them, and then what we talked about, being able to score touchdowns instead of field goals offensively. That was big too.
Well, and you and I also mentioned, you brought it up last week. You said you felt like for as good as Great Bend's defense was, there were areas where you felt comfortable attacking them in the run game. Your guys rushed for over 200 yards again against one of the top defenses in the state. How did you see your O-line specifically, and then, Reeves and Hall and the guys behind him get that done?
Yeah, we felt like that was an area that we were better. It's tough to say you have some levels or areas that you're better in a team like that, because they're just they get better the further back they get. Their backers are fantastic. The Kern brothers are probably Division II or better football players. And then you step back to the secondary, and Premer can play free safety at 4.5 yards. Like you just. Nobody does that. I mean, that's just creature ability right there. But he has it. He can be a run stopper, and then he can be in the deep third. But we thought up front was going to be our advantage, and we stuck to the plan. We gave him some misdirection. We were timely in what we did, taking shots, and in our pass game, in our RPO stuff, and that's where we thought we had a strength. And defensively, we thought kind of the same thing. We thought our box was going to be an area that we could win. Our backers, our D-line, did a fantastic job all night. They were going to have to play physical. When they had opportunities to put shots on kids, they were going to have to put shots. That takes a toll at 4 quarters, and that's what you do in 5A football. And that's what our box did, and our secondary just keeping people. A couple times they blew the top off our coverage, but they can do that. They've been doing it all year long, but they did a good job of corralling them and being well schemed and well coached.
Well, and you go from playing in your first state semifinal since 2007 to your first state championship since 2005. What does this mean, not just to you and the guys, but to a community that's been so hungry for a chance like this for so long?
Yeah, this community's been itching for something like this. There's been a lot of noise all playoffs, a lot of positivity, and you're seeing that this week. It's just become exponential. I mean, the kids they feel like they're walking on the red carpet. Like, it's exciting for them. It's big for the community. Our stakeholders, our support staff has been just absolutely second to none, and it's a big time deal. Playing for a state title in football anywhere across the country is a big deal. But here in Salina and Kansas, man, they take it up another notch.
Before we move on from last week, I can't not ask you about the play, and that would be the fake field goal that ends up netting you guys a touchdown. I'm sure that's something you guys have repped in practice, but to actually call it in a moment like that, I mean, what's going through your head as a head coach, and then to see the guys pull it off, just the jubilation on the sideline?
Yeah, I'm looking at a couple of things to know that it's going to be good, and I saw them all, and in real time, we got that defense to move a little bit, and again, it's easy to call, it's a lot more difficult to execute, and our kids executed it, and that's because we've been doing it so much. They're locked in. They were ready for it. We've always talked about situationally when that could be dialed up, and we have a number of those that situationally can be dialed up, and they were ready for it, and they made the most of it. I really thought 7 was bigger than 3. Sometimes you just got to concede to 3 and kick it and go about your business. But I really felt like where we were, the time of the game, the point differential, like that 7 was just too big not to call that.
Well, here you are. You're one step away from the ultimate prize. Before we look at your opponent, how are the guys feeling, and what is the energy like right now in that locker room?
Yeah, it's really locked in. But that's not surprising. You got 18 seniors like we got. We got guys who have been in the fire like we have. There's a business focus. We're having fun, and I think that's important too. But there's absolutely understanding that the next one's the biggest one, and that's what you get when you have leadership like we have, both in staff and in kids. So we're excited about the week. It's already feels like it's moving fast, but Friday will get here, and I think our kids will be ready.
Well, and Bayshore Linwood comes in undefeated. They're fresh off a win over St. James Academy. When you look at the team that you'll be battling it out with for a state championship, what stands out to you about the Bobcats when you take a look at them on film?
Yeah, they're really well coached. They have good scheme, both offensively and defensively. They're fast. They execute. I would say defensively, special teams, they're hustlers. They got some dudes. You don't get to this level, you don't get to this point without having a couple guys that the spotlight's on. But they're really consistent across the board. And I'd say very similar to us. We got a lot of good football players in a lot of positions. I wouldn't say we have a premier, although we do have a Division I commit, and so do they. But somebody who's, to that level of, can blow the top off, can make 9 guys miss and go to the house. But they have a lot of good football players, and they're well coached, and they hustle around. They're really fast on defense. So we're going to have to be well executed and well versed offensively. And then they know what they want to do offensively, and they do it really well. So we're going to have to be schemed up, and we're going to have to be sound defensively.
Well, and last thing for you here, Coach, and I know we've asked you this multiple weeks over the course of the year, but when you strip away, all the excitement, all the noise, all the pageantry of a state championship game, what's it going to take at the end of the day to bring home your first state title since 2005 for this program?
Yeah, I feel like I'm saying this every week in the playoffs, but you got to have 7 over 3. Again, there's a time that 3 points is huge, and we felt that last week. But when we're inside the red zone or the short red zone, we need to be scoring touchdowns, and we're going to have to do it against these guys. Turnovers are going to be big. If you'd have told me we were 300 yards of offense and we had 2 turnovers against a team like Great Bend, I'd have said, man, we weren't very clean that night, and that'll get you beat. We can't turn the football over. We got to protect it. That's the number one thing. Special teams are going to be big. There's always a momentum swing in special teams, and I hope it goes for us, whether it's a block kick, a big return, whatever it might be. And then we're going to have to limit their explosives. Like if they want to drive, we want to make them drive the distance. If we can keep them somewhat corralled, I think we're going to have a good chance to be celebrating come Friday about 5 p.m.
Well, Coach Sandbo, thank you so much for your time, not just today, but all season long. And hey, best of luck to you and your Mustangs here this week.
Tyler, appreciate it all year, man. You've elevated the experience for our kids, and you've made it feel big time, and that's really special.
Once again, that was Mark Sandbo, head coach of the Salina Central Mustangs. His guys taking on Bayshore Linwood this week for a 5A state championship. We will step away, but when we come back, the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show presented by Kansas Wesleyan rolls on. You're catching it right here on State Championship Week on KINA. Back here on the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show presented by Kansas Wesleyan, and we are joined now by Southeast of Saline head coach Mitch Gebhardt. Coach, first and foremost, thank you so much for stopping by today.
All right, thank you, Tyler.
So you have a powerhouse program that's been built from humble beginnings. I know you and your guys are only focused on the game ahead, but do you ever take a step back and really appreciate what it is that you and your staff have built here?
Well, I think over the last couple of weeks, it's kind of neat to look those things over, and it's exciting to see what we've done. We've been very fortunate to have awful good guys to coach, and we get a lot of people that buy into what we're doing, and that helps everything. But it's kind of neat to look at things.
There's it's a bit of a cliche saying, but it's one that I think rings true in a lot of cases. Tradition never graduates. I know you and I have talked a lot about the way your seniors and juniors have shown the underclassmen what it means to play Trojan football. Do you feel like that's kind of where this program is at?
Well, I really do. We've been fortunate for the last a lot of years to have good groups go through and good leaders go through, and that's so important to your program, whether it be making sure guys get in the weight room or making sure they show up for practice or make sure they're giving good effort during games. Whatever it is, we've been very fortunate to have good leaders over the last several years, and those guys just kind of hand down how we do things, and that just makes your program better.
I know you and the guys played, the last game in Gypsum last week, and I know your fans travel everywhere, but how much has the support of this community meant year in and year out, even before this big run?
No, it's huge. I mean, anytime you can look in the stands and see all those people there, and not just that, but make it. I mean, our parents make sure our kids get to wherever they need to be, and for the most part, if we want something or the football program needs something, we end up getting it one way or another. So our support's been outstanding ever since I've been here, and but it really is neat to look up in the stands, no matter if it's 105 or 10 degrees out, or we're playing on the road and it's a long way, or whatever it is. We always have a lot of people there to watch us.
I did want to take you back to Hoisington for just a moment. That's the best team that you and your guys have seen this season. You guys buckled down and found a way to get the job done. What impressed you most when you look back on the tape from that win?
I think just having grit. I mean, we let them score, then we score a couple times, and they come back and score, and it ends up 14-12. And we thought, all right, we get the ball back to start the second half, those type of things, and they kick the ball off to us, and we make a play, and Kenyon runs that touchdown back, get some good blocks. He fumbles the ball, picks it up, and still makes a play. And then who knew that was going to be the final score of that game? But our defense did an outstanding job in the second half. Coach Potacek always does a great job of making sure our guys are ready to go, and our guys did a good job in the second half, and neither team scored, and that ended up being the final score. So I think just being gritty, just making plays when they need to, and those things, that's pretty proud of those guys for doing that.
Well, and I'm not sure, how much you guys have harped on this stat, but you have a defense that has allowed 0 second-half points in the postseason. It's now a sample size of 4 games, including 3 against really solid offenses. What's been the key to, kind of the second-half adjustments and that second-half success?
Well, I think our kids just kind of hunker down and get after it. We know that second half is a huge thing in any playoff game or any game as far as that goes. And I feel like our kids begin to understand what the offense is doing and do a good job of getting a lot of guys the ball. And we played some good teams during the playoffs. And I didn't know that stat was true, but that's a good stat to have.
Looking at what is ahead now for you and your guys, you're back here in the state championship game. You're one of 3 teams in the state that'll have a chance to defend a state title this year. Is there any different sense of, maybe calm or energy in the locker room with a team that's been here before and done this, as opposed to, maybe last year where you were looking for the first state title under your tenure?
Well, I do think these runs we've made in the playoffs have helped us just confidence-wise and experience-wise, and we have guys several guys that have played in the state championship game and understand what that means and those type of things. But, I think the excitement's definitely still here for getting to play in that game. And that's a big deal. And it's pretty cool to be able to practice on Thanksgiving week. So, our kids are excited to go hopefully play a good football game.
I know that, you and your staff have always been a little bit perfectionistic, but at the same time, do you feel like, compared to the football that you guys have played for the first 12 weeks of the season, that this team is playing its best football down the stretch? And if so, what does that look like?
Well, I really believe this team's continued to improve. And one of my thoughts in the back of my head was, when we had all these guys back, are we going to be able to continue to improve, continue to get better? And these guys just have continued to work to get better every week. And I really do think we're playing our best football this time of year. And that's exactly where you want to be.
It's a rematch with Salina Central. They graduated just 4 seniors a year ago. So defending your title will be a challenge here this week. What do you make of this year's Thunder when you have a chance to watch the tape?
Well, Coach Classic does a great job there at Salina Central and has for a long time, and they've just got a good program. So anytime you match up against somebody like that, you know you're going to have to be playing well. Our kids understand that they have one of the best players in the state, and they also have one of the best offensive and defensive lines that play outstanding, and they're used to being here too. This is 4 years in a row that they've played in the state championship game. So we know we're going to have our hands full, and we've got to make sure we're playing at our best game, and we got to do some things to make sure that we're playing at our best.
Well, and much like Grady, Carter Hike is one of those athletes. He's impossible to fully stop. But, how do you slow him down and kind of limit his impact as best you can in a game like this?
You got to play good team defense because they have a good scheme for him. Their guys run it very well, and then he's a load to bring down. So we got to make sure that we're playing good team defense, getting a lot of hats to wherever the football is. And the crazy thing about this is they've got a lot of athletes, not just him, but they've got a lot of other guys that are dangerous. So you can't just try to slow him down. You've also got to understand what they're trying to do with those other guys too, and hopefully get them tackled.
On the other side of the ball, this is a defense that's put up very similar numbers, I think, to what your guys have this season. What makes that defense so stout, and how do you move the football against a unit as strong as what they have?
Well, like we are, it starts with the defensive line. They've got a very, very good defensive line, and they're very good at every level. You don't get this far if you aren't sound in everything they do, but. We got to understand that we got to be patient, and we got to work the ball and get first downs, move the football, and obviously on offense we want to take some time off the clock so that they don't have the football as much also. So we just got to be sound at what we do and take what they give us hopefully and get first downs.
Well, Coach Gebhardt, thank you so much for your time, sir. Not just today, but all season long, and best of luck to your Trojans defending their crown.
All right, thank you, Tyler. Appreciate it.
Once again, that was Mitch Gebhardt, head coach of the Southeast of Saline Trojans, and that will do it for us. But don't forget, Southeast of Saline football plays to defend their title this Saturday at noon, and you can catch that game right here on KINA or on Salina Post with live video coverage. But one last time for Devin Haney, I've been Tyler Henry. Thank you so much for tuning in all season long. This has been the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview Show. It's presented by Kansas Wesleyan University.